Hi, welcome to the first video of this channel. The aim of this channel is to help you learn basic programming skills and then create real world applications out of it that you can then use to upload on your GitHub profile and make your portfolio ready. So that if you're a student and you go for an interview, you will have a decent GitHub portfolio to show your interviewers, and that will help you with your job. The first app that we'd be making on this channel is a simple weather app that will show the weather information of a city using an API. And the API that we're going to use for this is from weatherapi.com. So to get started, visit this website and then make sure that you sign up and create an account, because this gives an API key that we would need. And this API key, this is not forever, it's a 14-day free trial, so this API key would last for 14 days. So if at a later point in time you want to demo this app to someone else, then make sure your API key is valid, and if not, create a new account and generate a new API key. But to get started, make sure you have your API key ready. And this is what the API would be like: api.weatherapi.com/v1/current.json, and we pass two parameters. The first is the API key and the second is the city, and it gives us a lot of information about that city, like the temperature in Celsius and Fahrenheit, as well as the wind speed, the date and time, is it a day or not, all such information that we can show in our app. So let's get started. Here I am in my terminal. I am going into the documents folder because I want my app to be here, and then we're using Vite to create the new app. I enter the command npm create Vite @latest, and then I enter all the information it is asking me to. I enter the project name as weather, and then it asks me about the package name. I'm going to just keep it the same, and then I select React as the framework, and then I'll select TypeScript as the variant. I think this would be a good way to learn React along with TypeScript, and that's it. The app is ready. Now it's asking us to do some steps. The first is to check out the app that we created, cd space weather, and then we will do npm install. What npm install does is that it would install all of the packages that are needed for this app, and it may take a couple of minutes to complete, but then once it's done, we can get started with the app. And yeah, it's done. The next step now is to start the dev server, and to do that we enter the command npm run dev. This starts our local server at localhost 5173. So we go back to our browser and we enter localhost 5173. And as you can see, our template page is being rendered. We've used Vite to create this React app, and it gives us a home page in the beginning. Coming back to Visual Studio Code, I have opened up my application already. This is what the folder structure is. Our main code will reside in the source folder, wherein there are some assets, and then there is this file app.tsx. The template page that we saw is being rendered from here. Now we don't need any of these, so we will just remove it all, because here is where our logic is going to be. And then I think we're good enough to start. So the first thing that we would need, I'm just typing it a sample line to see if it's getting rendered properly. I'm just typing the name of the channel, Smart Software Dev, and yep, it reflects on the page now, and I don't see the template page anymore. I'll just remove all the assets that was already imported on this page because I don't need it anymore, along with app.css. Now coming back, as I said, we would be using Tailwind CSS in this app. I'm just checking out my app repository in another window in the terminal, and then I do npx tailwind install, and then I'll do tailwind init. And once all of that is done, I will go to tailwind.config.js in my app, and here I want to add this line in the content to tell my tailwind config that these are the files that it should be working upon. I'm adding HTML, JS, and yes. And then coming back to index.css, I add these 3 lines here. These are a part of the Tailwind setup, and in order to make sure that the Tailwind works properly, I need to do these. By the way, if you're not aware of Tailwind, you can refer to its documentation. It provides a good enough documentation for it all. Let's get started. I'll be importing 2 hooks from React. The first is use effect and the second is use state. Use state helps us create state variables. Using use state, I can create a state variable wherein I get to define the initial value of the state and a function that will help me update that state. So let's create a new state variable called maybe data. So initial value would be inside data, and set data would be the function that would help me update the data. And then initially my data would be empty. I don't have any data yet. But once we call our API and we fetch the data information, we would store the information in the data state variable. And then the next hook that we have is use effect. I will be using this hook to make my API call. And so inside use effect, there is a function in which I will be calling my API. To call my API, I use the fetch function, and yep, this is the API that I want. I showed it to you guys earlier. I just copy and paste it here. Make sure to have your API key updated and enter the city of your choice. The Q parameter is for the city. I'm entering the city as Helsinki, and then using the then function is called when I get a response from the API. To receive this response, I'm using the variable name as response itself. And then I'm converting that response into JSON format. And then when the response gets converted to JSON, I do a dot then again, which then I'm getting as data. And let's log this data and see what we get. Alright, and when I go back to my page now, I get to see that I'm getting 2 keys in my object, data object. The first is current and the second is location. Location has information like country, latitude, longitude, and the region, along with the local date and time and the local epoch. And if I go to current, there's other information like the temperature, humidity, whether it's a day or not, what's the dew point, the wind degree, the wind speed, etc. So I have all the information that I need from this API. Coming back to my code, I am just adding an empty array as the last parameter for use effect to make sure that it doesn't keep getting called again. I am going to use the set data function to set the result from the API into the state variable data. And now that I'm doing it, I realize that maybe I should have named my state variable as something else, because data in both places sounds confusing now. And so let's maybe let's rename this to info, so that our state variable remains data and it's less confusing. And now I want to log my state variable data to see if everything's all right. It's giving an empty array. I think it's because I'm logging it outside the fetch. If I log it inside the then, yep, I think my state variable is now giving me the correct detail. So whatever was there in the info, that is I received from the API, I am now able to see the same in my state variable data. And let's get started with the actual templating. I don't need that smart studio anymore. What I now need is, let's start by displaying the name of the city. We're getting it from data.location.name. I forgot to include the parenthesis, so let's add the same thing there. From my state variable data, I get the location key, which in itself is an object that gives me a name key, which is the name of the city. I want to start by displaying the name of the city. This slight error thing we can ignore for now, but I think, yeah, it displayed the name of the city as Helsinki. And the next thing that we want to see is the date and time, maybe. So to do that, again, data dot location dot local time. This is the key that I got from the API, but is going to be let's format it in proper date time formatted. To do that, I'm using the JavaScript date library. So new date, to which I pass the local time, and then I'm using the function provided by the JavaScript library itself, and that is toDate string. And yeah, I see the date and I see that it's a Saturday. And let's see the time now. So to get the time, I have to do the same thing, the same key, that is the local time key, passed to the JavaScript date library, but instead I'm doing to local time string. And yeah, I see the time too now, 12:17 p.m. And now let's add some styling to it. It's looking very boring as of now. So to add style in React, we don't use class. What we use instead is class name. But before that, I think I forgot this step in Tailwind, wherein I have to add a watch to the index.css file and then make it output into the output.css file. This watch will keep on running the entire time we are developing this application, and what it will basically do is that it will get the styles from anywhere we've applied in the code and would build it into a format that's understandable by the renderers and compilers and put it in output.css. And then I want to tell my React app to refer to this output.css. So to do that, I go to my index.html and in it I'm adding this new line, link relationship style sheet href output.css, which means I'm telling my React app to refer this output.css for all its style sheet needs. And while we're at it, I'll change the title that appears on the top of the browser. I want my app's name to be represented here, and so I type weather app, and then we come to weatconfig.ts. I want this to work well with Tailwind, and so I add a CSS key here, and then this is basically an object in which I enter post CSS, and I mention the plugin that I want to use, and that plugin is Tailwind CSS. But to use that, I'll have to first import Tailwind CSS on top. And yep, I think some of the style got applied. What I had done was I had reduced the width of the screen to half, and then I had applied margins on both the left and right side. That's by MX Auto. And then I had made the text center, and then I want some padding on top, so PT 10 maybe was a little less, so PT 20. Yep. And let's style the name. I want to increase the font size of the city. I'm using text XL, and then I want to make it bold, so to do that the class is font semi bold. If you don't know any of these classes, Tailwind provides a really good documentation that you can refer. I'm making the font size of the date and time a little smaller because I want the focus of my design to be on the city name. And now I had added these two assets in my app. One is day for day and one is for night. So I would want some image representation of when it's day and when it's night, and I will be using those. I'm giving a parent to whatever I've added so far. Let's start by giving our app a background. So I'm first giving the background a width and a height. W screen means the width should encompass the entire screen, and H screen means the height should encompass the entire screen. And then I'm using data.current.isDay to check if it's day. Then I want the background to be BG blue 100, but if it's night I want the background to be darker, so I'm keeping it as BG gray 700. I changed the city to New York because I wanted to check the night view, changing it back to Helsinki to check the day view. And yeah, because it's currently day in Helsinki and it's night in New York. Going back to New York. Yep, changed back to dark again. Now let's start maybe by adding the image. So to do that, it's going to be again conditional. I'll have to check the API to see if it's a day. Then the image that I would want to render would be the day PNG. I'm moving both these images from the assets folder to the public folder. Because there it would get easily built and I would be able to reflect that. And then I'll add my source accordingly, and my image got rendered. And now that my image is rendered, it's not. Let's check the other image. I'm changing back the city to Helsinki, and yep, it's reflecting. I'll be adding a parent to this so that I can style it accordingly. Let me add some classes. The first would be flex and justify center, because I want it to be in the center. It's currently not. And then to the image I'll be adding a height. This is too small, I need to increase it. Yeah, let's try this. Did not work. This is again way too small. Let's try this. I think decent enough. Let's try one more height to see. Just doing some trial and error till I find the right height that looks good for the app, and I think this should be it. Adding the same to the night image too. And now that we have the image ready, let's get back to the actual meat of it, and that is the temperature. So to do that, I am doing data.current dot temp underscore c. It would give me the temperature of this place in degrees Celsius. If I want to show temperature in Fahrenheit, then the key for that is temp underscore f. You can use whichever you want to display in your app, and then let's style it accordingly. I'm trying to make the temperature in a bigger font size because that's an important information in the app. A rule of design is to only bring the focus of your users to important stuff, and the others can be smaller font because I don't want their focus immediately on those aspects. Let's make it a bit more bold. Now we'll go ahead and add some more information. Like I want to show a good morning message if it is a day. So again, the is day key is being used to show a message to the user, either good morning or good evening. Yup, gets rendered. Let's style it. I want it to be bolder, so I'd used font medium, bold but not too bold. and a little smaller text SM. Okay, maybe not bold. I'm just trying out variations to see what makes the UI look better. I've always preferred this method wherein I try various variations and see which one gives the better result. I'm again adding some conditional classes. So again using the condition, and if it's day, I want the message to be displayed in a slight gray color. I'm using text gray 500. And then if it's not day, because already our background was gray at night, a text of gray would not look good on it. And then you can add the name of the user. I'm adding studio as the name, so you can add any name you want so that it feels more personalized. Let's add it to another div, maybe, because we would get to style it the way we want to style it. Yep, copying the above condition as below. Here also I'm making the text colors conditional, so that if it's day, I want all these information that are not that important to appear in a slight light gray color. And now that we have those information, let's add some more information. I want to show 3 more pieces of data here next to each other. So I'm making my structure accordingly. You must have seen this in a lot of weather apps where they show feels like, which means the temperature is actually something, but it feels something else. So our API gives us that information too. And the next thing I want to show is humidity, because that's also one of the important factors that people would like to know. And the third would be wind speed. I've just added the headers now, and now we'll add the actual data from the API, and that is for feels like it's data dot current dot feels like underscore C for Celsius. If you want Fahrenheit, you will use the key feels like underscore F. And humidity. The key is data.current.humidity. And the third, wind speed, and to show that we use data.current.wind underscore kph, which means kilometer per hour. You can also show it in mile per hour. There's a separate key for it. Now I noticed that there's this error after I had refreshed. It's something related to the isDay key that we've used from the API, and now I realize is that I forgot to add a question mark wherever I've used it. This question mark is important because the first time the app tries to render and API information isn't present, things would break. The question mark tells the code to make sure that the current key is not undefined before checking for a key inside of it. So in case when the page loads for the first time and we don't have the data from the API just yet, it won't break our application. I'm adding a question mark there wherever I need to. And yeah, I can see my app working fine now. Time to style this piece as well. I want all of them to appear next to each other. So to do that, I'm making it flex. Yep. And then I want some sort of spacing between each. And I want the title and the data to be one above another. So flex and flex call. So that I want the title feels like to be there and then its data below it. I'm adding, just copy and pasting it everywhere. So yeah, and then let's add some space between all of it. Justified in the center. I want the text to be in a slight gray color and slightly bold, so font medium and text gray 500 for that. And then I copy that same condition and I'm pasting it wherever these titles are, like for humidity and for wind speed, like this. And yeah, you can see it reflect. Let's style the data values as well. We will make them a little large because they are important and I want my users' attention to be there. Yeah, like this. Let's increase the size a little. I'm just checking what all can we change now. I think I'm going to make these texts a little bit bigger, but not as big as other keys, just slightly. Let's see the night view of it, changing the city back to New York. This is what it looks like. Let's check the mobile view. Okay, it's horrible in mobile because I think we restricted the width too much, and we don't want that in mobile. So what we will do is we will add a prefix md. What How Tailwind works is that all the styles that you apply are mobile first, and if you want to be different in iPad or mobile, then you use prefixes like md or lg. So I want the size to be 1/4 if it's an iPad or a desktop, but I want it to be full screen in mobile. So where I had added with 1/4, I am adding an MD, and then I'm adding some padding here. It's like this width is, this margin at the top is too much for mobile, so I'm making it iPad first, and then yeah, for mobile it came a little on top now. So and then here I'm again giving it all a common parent to the, because I want to adjust the spacing between these lines, and to do that I'm adding the class space y. Space y adds vertical height between the elements inside. So the degree Celsius and the good morning or good evening and the name, the distance between them would be adjusted by this. Yeah, I think 2 was a bit too much. Space x y looks 1 looks decent. The same with the city, date and time. I am adding a common parent to all of these because I want to adjust the vertical space between them. And yeah, I think it reflects. Let's check a couple of other devices. I'm checking iPad mini. Okay, this can be improved too. So going back to where I had added the width, maybe 1/4 is not proper for iPad. So for iPad I'm making it with maybe, yep, a width of half should be enough for iPad. And the margin can be adjusted too, but yep. Yeah, and coming back desktop view, just checking if any of the styles that I changed is not affecting here. Changing the city back to something else. Yup, I added Paris. And then I'll just try with a couple of cities. Toronto, it's night. Mumbai, it's day. Mecca, it's day. 40 degrees Celsius, that's too much. Cairo, 28 degrees Celsius. Kuala Lumpur, 26 degrees Celsius. Jakarta, Changing it back to what it was before, I think our app is ready, and you can type in the city of your choice to get the weather information from that city. You can also incorporate a drop down of cities, and based on the changing in the city, you can reflect that information. But I think that is all for this app now.